Donald John Trump, former President of the United States, is not guilty as charged in the article of impeachment.
Former President Donald Trump acquitted in his second impeachment trial. Senate Democrats failed to flip enough Republicans to secure the two-thirds vote needed. The final vote was 57 to 43. In a surprising about-face, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell berated the former president just minutes after voting to acquit him.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president.
Well, despite his sentiments, McConnell said he ultimately could not vote to convict Trump because he is constitutionally not eligible for conviction because he is no longer president.
Hey friends, welcome. Adam here. So what just happened, guys? 57 senators voted to convict Trump, the highest conviction vote against any president in history, with 7 Republicans breaking ranks. He survived, but by just 10 votes. 10 senators stood between him and removal from office, but the vote fell short. The conviction did not happen.
There is new fallout tonight after the second impeachment of former President Trump that ended in his acquittal. CBS 2's Skylar Henry has more from Washington.
The day after President Trump was acquitted, House impeachment manager Jamie Raskin says Democrats faced an uphill battle trying to convince Senate Republicans.
There's no reasoning with people who basically are acting like members of a religious cult, and when they leave office should be selling flowers at Dulles Airport.
The 57 to 43 vote fell short of the two-thirds majority needed to convict the former president. The 7 Republicans who joined Democrats to vote guilty are now facing backlash. Saturday night, the Louisiana Republican Party Executive Committee voted to censure Senator Bill Cassidy. He's defending his decision.
I'm attempting to hold President Trump accountable, and that is the trust I have from the people that elected me. And I am very confident that as time passes, people will move to that position.
And yet, the message was unmistakable. The message was that Trump's own party thinks he is guilty. The message was that even Republicans believe Trump incited a violent attack on the Capitol. The message was that Trump is vulnerable. Trump is exposed. Trump can be held accountable. And Trump understood that message. Trump got scared. Trump realized that his power is not absolute. Trump realized that his party is not a shield that will protect him from anything.
Tonight, the Senate has acquitted the former president by a vote of 57 to 43. 7 Republicans joining every Democrat in voting guilty, but falling short of the two-thirds majority required to convict. The vote after a dramatic twist, the House managers acting as prosecutors, moving to call a witness about a heated phone call between Republican leader Kevin McCarthy and the former president during the siege. Mr. Trump reportedly refusing to tell the rioters to stand down. The president's lawyers expressing outrage at the move. An advisor to the former president saying if there would be witnesses, their side would call more than 300. Then a compromise. A statement from a representative about that phone call in question would be added to the record.
Trump realized that he could lose, and that realization terrified him more than any political opponent ever has. That is why his inner circle was described as rattled. That is why aides said Trump was disturbed. That is why his victory in the impeachment trial felt hollow. Because Trump understood what the vote really meant. He understood that 10 votes stood between him and conviction. He understood that his party is fracturing. He understood that he is vulnerable. And that knowledge has haunted him ever since. Stay with me, because I am going to break down exactly what happened on January 6th, exactly how the impeachment trial unfolded, exactly what the 57 vote meant, exactly why it terrified Trump, and exactly why this story will shape the 2026 midterm elections. Let me start with what happened on January 6th, because understanding the crime is essential to understanding the vote. Trump told his supporters to march to the Capitol. He told them to fight like hell. He told them that if they did not fight, they would not have a country anymore. And his supporters listened. They marched to the Capitol. They broke into the building. They attacked police officers. They damaged property. They spread terror through the halls of Congress. And Trump watched it all on television. He watched the violence unfolding in real time. He watched his supporters assaulting law enforcement. He watched them smashing windows and storming the building where the peaceful transfer of power was taking place. And he did nothing. He did not tell them to stop. He did not call for calm. He did not order them to leave. He just watched. He let it happen. For hours, the violence continued. For hours, the Capitol was under siege. For hours, Trump sat in the White House watching the chaos he had unleashed. And only after hours of destruction, only after the damage was done, did he finally release a video. He told his supporters to go home, but he also told them he loved them. He told them he understood them. He told them they were special. He was praising the rioters even as he told them to leave. That is what the evidence showed. That is why the House impeached him. That is why the case went to the Senate for trial. The Senate trial was a moment of high drama and high stakes. The House managers presented evidence. Trump's lawyers made their arguments. The question before the Senate was simple: did Trump incite an insurrection against the United States government? Trump's lawyers argued that he did not. They argued that his words were protected speech. They argued that he should not be convicted. But the evidence was overwhelming. The evidence showed that Trump told his supporters to march to the Capitol. The evidence showed that Trump told them to fight. The evidence showed that Trump told them to fight even as the violence was happening. The evidence showed that Trump told them he loved them even after they had attacked the Capitol. And then the Senate voted. 57 senators voted guilty. 57. That is 10 votes short of the 2/3 required for conviction. But it is the highest number of senators ever to vote to convict a president. It broke records. It made history. And among those 57 were 7 Republicans. 7 members of Trump's own party voted to convict him. Mitt Romney voted guilty. Lisa Murkowski voted guilty. Ben Sasse voted guilty. 4 other Republicans joined them. 7 total. 7 Republicans said Trump is guilty. 7 Republicans said Trump incited the riot. 7 Republicans said Trump should be convicted. That is unprecedented. That is devastating. That is proof that Trump's party is not united behind him. That is proof that Trump has enemies within his own party. That is proof that Trump cannot rely on lockstep party loyalty. And then Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, gave a statement that made everything even worse for Trump. McConnell said Trump is morally and practically responsible for January 6th. McConnell said Trump violated his oath of office. McConnell said Trump is guilty. And then McConnell voted not guilty, not because he believed Trump was innocent, but because he believed it was too late to convict a president after he had already left office. So let me add this up for you. 57 senators voted to convict. The Republican leader said Trump is guilty. 7 Republicans broke with Trump and voted against him. And Trump sat there watching it all happen, watching his own party turn against him, watching the vote count climb, watching himself come within 10 votes of conviction. That is when Trump got scared. Let me break down what the 57 vote really means and why it terrified Trump. Trump nearly got convicted. 57 votes is not enough, but it is close. It is within reach. It is a warning. It is saying that if the political winds shift, if more Republicans vote their conscience, if the pressure builds, Trump could be convicted. And that is a real threat to Trump. That is a threat he understood immediately. Trump's own party thinks he is guilty. 7 Republicans voted to convict. 7 Republicans said Trump incited the riot. 7 Republicans said Trump should be convicted. That is huge. That is unprecedented. That is proof that Trump's party is fracturing. That is proof that Trump has enemies within his own party. That is proof that Trump cannot count on automatic loyalty. McConnell's statement was devastating. McConnell is the Republican leader. He carries enormous weight in the party. When McConnell says Trump is morally and practically responsible for January 6th, when McConnell says Trump violated his oath, when McConnell says Trump is guilty, that is a major blow. That is a wound that does not heal easily. Trump is vulnerable. Trump came within 10 votes of conviction. Trump is exposed. Trump's power is fragile. Trump's support is not as solid as it seems. Trump's party is fracturing. Trump's future is uncertain. And that is what scared Trump. That is what made his inner circle rattled. That is what made Trump understand that he could lose everything. Trump's reaction to the vote was telling. He did not accept responsibility. He did not show humility or contrition. He did not acknowledge the damage he had caused. Instead, he attacked. He claimed it was a witch hunt. He said his movement was just getting started. He tried to spin the vote as irrelevant. But his inner circle knew better. His aides knew that the vote was devastating. His team understood that Trump had come within 10 votes of conviction. His people realized that Trump was vulnerable, and that realization made them panic. That realization made them scared. That realization made them understand that Trump's political future was fragile, and that fear is justified because Trump is vulnerable. Trump can be held accountable. Trump can be removed from power. All it takes is voters understanding Trump's vulnerability and voting accordingly. So what does this mean for 2026 and beyond? It means voters need to understand that Trump nearly got convicted. It means voters need to understand that Trump's own party thinks he is guilty. It means voters need to understand that Trump is vulnerable to accountability. It means voters need to vote based on that understanding, because if Trump came this close to conviction once, he can come close again. Because if 7 Republicans voted to convict once, 7 Republicans could vote to convict again. Because if McConnell says Trump is guilty, McConnell could push for conviction next time. Because if the vote is this close, the next vote could be different. And that is what terrified Trump. That is what made him scared. That is why his inner circle was rattled. Because Trump understood that he came within 10 votes of being convicted. Trump understood that his own party thinks he is guilty. Trump understood that he is vulnerable. And Trump understood that political winds shift. If the pressure builds, if more senators vote their conscience, Trump could be convicted. So in 2026, when voters go to the polls, they need to remember the 57 vote. They need to remember that Trump nearly got convicted. They need to remember that Trump's own party thinks he is guilty. They need to remember that Trump is vulnerable. And they need to vote accordingly. They need to vote to remove Trump. They need to vote to hold Trump accountable. They need to vote to ensure that Trump cannot escape consequences. That is what the 57 vote really means. That is what it shows about Trump's vulnerability. That is why it matters for 2026 and the future of America. Let me be absolutely clear about what the 57 vote means in the context of Trump's entire political career. This is not just about impeachment. This is about accountability. This is about whether a president can be held responsible for his actions. This is about whether the rule of law still matters. And the 57 vote shows that accountability is possible. The 57 vote shows that even Trump's own party will vote to convict him if the evidence is overwhelming. The 57 vote shows that the rule of law still matters. The 57 vote shows that Trump is vulnerable to accountability. And that is what terrified Trump. That is what made his inner circle panic. That is what made Trump understand that he is not as powerful as he thought. Trump came into his presidency thinking he could do anything. Trump came into his presidency thinking his party would protect him no matter what. Trump came into his presidency thinking he was untouchable. But the 57 vote proved him wrong. The 57 vote proved that his party will vote against him. The 57 vote proved that accountability is possible. The 57 vote proved that Trump is vulnerable. And that realization scared Trump more than anything else because Trump thrives on projecting strength. Trump thrives on appearing invincible. Trump thrives on the image of a man who cannot be beaten. But the 57 vote shattered that image. The 57 vote showed that Trump can be vulnerable. The 57 vote showed that Trump is not invincible. The 57 vote showed that Trump can be defeated. And that is devastating to Trump. That is devastating to Trump's brand. That is devastating to Trump's political future. Because if voters believe Trump is vulnerable, they will vote against him. If voters believe Trump can be defeated, they will work to defeat him. If voters believe Trump is not invincible, they will believe he can lose. And that belief will drive voters to the polls in 2026. That belief will make voters vote against Trump. That belief will make voters vote to remove Trump from power, because voters will remember the 57 vote. Voters will remember that Trump nearly got convicted. Voters will remember that Trump's own party voted against him. And voters will vote accordingly. This is the story that defines Trump's vulnerability. This is the story that shows Trump's weakness. This is the story that proves Trump is not invincible. This is the story that will drive voters to remove Trump in 2026. Because Trump nearly got convicted, Trump came within 10 votes of removal. Trump is vulnerable. Trump is scared, and voters will exploit that vulnerability. Voters will remove Trump. Voters will hold Trump accountable. Voters will restore democracy. That is the power of the 57 vote. That is what it means. That is what it will cost Trump. That is what will determine the 2026 midterms and the future of America. This story has been playing out since 2021. The 57 vote happened in February of that year, but it is still relevant. It is still being replayed. It is still being used to argue that Trump is vulnerable. It is still being used to argue that accountability is possible. It is still being used to argue that voters should remove Trump. And that makes sense because the 57 vote proved something fundamental about Trump and American democracy. The 57 vote proved that even a sitting president can face accountability. The 57 vote proved that even a sitting president's own party will vote against him if the evidence is overwhelming. The 57 vote proved that democracy still has defenses against presidential abuse of power. And those defenses matter. Those defenses are what stand between democracy and authoritarianism. Those defenses are what allow accountability to happen. Those defenses are what the 57 vote represented. That is why the 57 vote matters so much. That is why it is still being replayed. That is why it is still relevant to the 2026 election, because voters need to understand that accountability is possible. Voters need to understand that even Trump's own party will vote against him. Voters need to understand that democracy still has defenses. Voters need to understand that Trump is vulnerable, and the 57 vote proves all of those things. So in 2026, when voters go to the polls, they need to remember the 57 vote. They need to remember that Trump nearly got convicted. They need to remember that 7 Republicans voted against Trump. They need to remember that McConnell said Trump was guilty. They need to remember that Trump got scared when he realized he was vulnerable. And voters need to use that knowledge. Voters need to exploit Trump's vulnerability. Voters need to remove Trump from power. Voters need to ensure that Trump faces accountability, not just in the Senate, but at the ballot box. Voters need to use democracy to hold Trump accountable. That is the final message. That is what the 57 vote teaches us. That is what will determine the 2026 midterms. Trump nearly got convicted. Trump is vulnerable. Trump is scared. And voters will exploit that to remove him from power and save democracy. Remember that Trump's reaction to the vote was telling. Trump did not accept the verdict. Trump did not take responsibility. Trump did not show humility or contrition. Instead, Trump attacked. Trump claimed it was a witch hunt. Trump said his movement is just getting started. Trump tried to spin the vote as irrelevant. But Trump's inner circle knew better. Trump's aides knew that the vote was devastating. Trump's team understood that Trump had come within 10 votes of conviction. Trump's people realized that Trump was vulnerable, and that realization made them panic. That realization made them scared. That realization made them understand that Trump's political future was fragile, and that fear is justified because Trump is vulnerable. Trump can be held accountable. Trump can be removed from power. All it takes is voters understanding Trump's vulnerability and voting accordingly. And that is exactly what will happen in 2026. Voters will understand Trump's vulnerability. Voters will remember the 57 vote. Voters will vote to remove Trump. Voters will ensure accountability, and Trump will lose power. That is the consequence of the 57 vote. That is what it means for 2026. That is why this story matters. Trump nearly got convicted. Trump is scared. Trump is vulnerable. And democracy will prevail. This is the moment we are talking about. This is the moment that will echo through 2026. This is the moment when Trump realized he could lose. This is the moment when Trump's power was revealed to be fragile. This is the moment when democracy fought back and nearly won. and that moment will repeat itself in 2026. When voters vote, they will remember. Voters will act. Voters will remove Trump. Voters will save democracy. The 57 vote is the proof. The 57 vote is the warning. The 57 vote is the promise that accountability is possible, so voters need to remember that in 2026. Voters need to carry that knowledge into the voting booth. Voters need to vote to remove Trump and ensure accountability prevails. That is the message. That is what matters. That is the story that will define 2026. Trump nearly got convicted. Trump is scared, and democracy will win. Remember that this was not just about one vote. This was about the future of democracy. This was about whether accountability means anything. This was about whether a president can be held responsible for his actions. And the 57 vote answered that question. The answer is yes. A president can be held accountable. A president can face conviction. A president can lose power. And that answer will drive voters in 2026. That answer will make voters vote to remove Trump. That answer will make voters hold Trump accountable at the ballot box. Because if the Senate came close to convicting Trump, voters can definitely remove Trump. If Trump nearly got convicted once, Trump can definitely lose an election. If Trump came within 10 votes of removal, Trump can definitely be beaten. That is what the 57 vote means for 2026. That is the message voters will carry into the voting booth. That is the knowledge that will drive the midterms. Trump is vulnerable. Trump can be beaten. Democracy can win. That is the promise of democracy. That is what the 57 vote represents. That is what will happen in 2026.